Welcome to the deep dive. You know, the global landscape can shift so quickly. One minute you're focused on intense fighting, the next it's high-stakes trade talks, or even a surprising bit of de-escalation. Today we're going to dig into some crucial updates from a recent YouTube source, Trumperdes prazo para Putin de 50 para 10 días, ultimatum, Pokrovsk, ciudad de sitiada, from the channel Historia en Gotas. Our mission, as always, is to unpack the key insights, help you get a handle on the latest in Ukraine, some big diplomatic moves, a pretty major trade deal, and maybe a flicker of hope from Southeast Asia. So get ready for some surprising context. Okay, let's start with Ukraine, the evolving front line there. We saw those overnight Russian attacks recently. And the scale, well, the Ukrainian Air Force reported, was it 324 drones and 7 missiles? That's a lot. Significant barrage, yeah. And the main target seems to have been Starokostiantynivka out west, that strategic airbase. Right. But Kyiv got hit, too. Yeah. Mir Klitschko reported a residential building was struck in the Darnitsky district. 8 people injured, apparently.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Serhiy Popko from Kyiv's military administration called the impact considerable, but luckily no deaths reported there. But then you have the official sources reporting fewer hits overall, just 15 drones, 2 missiles hitting targets in 3 regions they didn't name.
That discrepancy, it really highlights the fog of war, doesn't it? Getting clear information early on is always tough.
Absolutely. Initial reports often shift as things become clear.
And it wasn't just Ukraine affected. Those air raid alerts went on for hours across much of the country, and even neighboring Poland went on alert.
Right. They scrambled their own fighter jets. Just shows how close this conflict feels, even for neighbors. That proximity is key.
Yeah, it underscores the wider European security concerns. That constant tension must be draining.
It really must be. Psychologically, economically. It's a huge burden, even beyond the immediate fighting.
Definitely. And while the air attacks make headlines, there's that grueling ground offensive, Russia's summer offensive, especially around Pokrovsk. Viktor Tegobov, he's a spokesperson for Ukraine's Kortisia group, he told the Supply Portal that Russian troops have advanced between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka.
And Pokrovsk, strategically, is just vital. It links different Ukrainian fronts. Russia's been pushing towards it for months. You know, Deep State, that Ukrainian analysis group, they'd already flagged Russian advances near Kostiantynivka last month. That's about, 47 kilometers southeast of Pokrovsk?
So Tegobov said Russia achieved a partial wedge there, and now they're trying to expand it.
Exactly. That's the tactical picture he painted. Ukraine's trying to slow him down, obviously.
So it's not like a direct assault on Pokrovsk itself is imminent.
Tegobov clarified that no. It seems the Russian objective right now is more about encircling or bypassing the city's defenses. Going straight in would mean huge losses and maybe not much gain right now, beyond pushing Ukrainian drone operators back a bit.
So a different approach from, say, Mariupol or Bakhmut. Less of the human wave tactics.
Precisely. It looks more calculated, more gradual. They've concentrated troops. Remember, Commander Syrskyi said about 111,000 soldiers were near Pokrovsk back in June. But it seems they don't have enough manpower, or perhaps the will, to repeat those massive, costly assaults. They're aiming for partial, step-by-step control instead.
And technology is playing a massive part in this too, right? Michael Kaufman mentioned Russia using more of those fiber-optic cable drones. What's the deal with those?
Yes. Those are tricky. Because they use a physical hair-thin cable, they're much harder to jam with the usual electronic warfare stuff both sides rely on.
So normal jammers don't work?
Largely, no. The cable bypasses that radio frequency interference, and these drones can operate deep, maybe up to 25 kilometers behind the lines. They're not just hitting forces, they're targeting Ukrainian logistics, too. And Roman Proli from Deep State made the point that Russia simply has more of them. That gives them a real advantage.
Wow. That's a significant technological edge.
Yeah.
How does that translate to the fighting in Pokrovsk itself?
Well, we saw that attempted sabotage raid on July 18th, which was repelled. But then just a few days later, Deep State and soldiers were reporting Russian forces actually in parts of the city. They mentioned a search and destroy operation. That sounds like small-scale urban combat starting.
Grim. And the humanitarian situation sounds awful.
It does. Governor Flashkin said maybe 380 people are left in Pokrovsk, plus another 2,700 nearby. He called it on the verge of a humanitarian disaster.
Just getting water and food in must be incredibly hard with the constant shelling.
Yeah, the head of the local military administration, Serhiy Dobryak, said supermarkets are basically about to close for good. It's getting desperate.
And you mentioned Deep State maps showing the Russian advance speeding up, especially after they took that highway between Pokrovsk and Kostiantynivka back in May.
That's right. It seems to have opened a path. One main road into Pokrovsk is apparently already covered in camo nets just to shield vehicles from drones.
The scale of the Russian gains there is quite something, too.
Yeah, Pavel Oanen, an analyst with that Finnish group Blackbird, he noted the territory Russia controls there jumped from around 226 square kilometers in April to 538 in May. And Deep State reckons over a quarter of the total land Russia took in June, about 556 square kilometers, was specifically in that Pokrovsk sector.
So it really is one of the hottest, most dangerous spots on the entire front line right now.
Definitely seems that way. It's incredibly dynamic and perilous there.
Okay, so with all that pressure on the front, let's widen the lens a bit. Look at the geopolitical ripples, starting with Trump and his stance on the war. Big news there on Monday.
Yeah, quite a shift. He announced he's cutting down that deadline he gave Moscow to end the war. Remember, it was 50 days.
Right, 50 days. What is it now?
Just 10 to 12 days. He said it was due to frustration with Putin's stance. It's much shorter fuse now. Serious pressure.
Wow, 10 days, okay. And this war, it's clearly pushing other countries to rethink their own military capabilities, like Germany.
Exactly. That German paper, Hans Blech, reported Germany's military is looking to develop long-range combat drones. Drones capable of hitting targets deep inside enemy territory.
So they're actively seeking proposals.
Yes, the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, has put out requests to defense companies, both the big traditional ones and newer startups. You've got Airbus working with Kratos, the U.S. startup, Rheinmetall, the German giant, partnering with Anduril, and that Munich startup, Helsing, is in the mix too.
Interesting collaborations.
It is. The German Defense Ministry confirmed they're in the preparation phase. No formal tender yet, but it shows they're serious about boosting those long-range capabilities, likely learning lessons from Ukraine.
Which makes sense in this current climate. And speaking of changing stances, Austria's situation is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. Austria's foreign minister, Pith Hansinger, telling the German paper Welt she's open to a national debate about potentially joining NATO.
That's huge for Austria, isn't it, given their history of neutrality since 1955?
It really is. That neutrality was part of the deal for them to regain sovereignty after World War II. But Hansinger's argument is, well, times have changed. She basically said neutrality alone isn't protection anymore. They need stronger self-defense, deeper security partnerships. Her quote was something like, "We cannot sit and say, if we do nothing, no one will do anything to us. The world has changed."
We saw Finland and Sweden make that leap already, joining NATO. What makes this Austrian discussion so significant?
Well, unlike Finland and Sweden, there isn't currently a majority, politically or publicly, in Austria wanting to join NATO. So the fact a top government minister is even putting it on the table for discussion is highly unusual.
It signals a potential shift in thinking, even if the path isn't clear yet.
Exactly. Hansinger stressed neutrality doesn't mean doing nothing, that they can't be naive, and Austria does already participate in EU missions and defense policy. But this is different, a fundamental question being asked.
And it ties right back into the conflict, because NATO expansion is one of the reasons Putin gives for the war, framing it as existential for Russia. So this Austrian debate adds another layer to that whole dynamic.
Precisely. Every move, even just a debate, ripples through the wider geopolitical landscape.
Okay, let's switch gears now to global trade, a really big development here. The U.S. and EU reached a trade agreement yesterday. In Scotland, right?
That's right. Direct talks between Trump and Ursula von der Leyen. It was a last-ditch effort before that August 1st deadline, which could have meant much higher tariffs.
So what was the outcome?
They landed on a 15% tariff for most European goods going to the U.S. The stated goal from both sides was basically to dodge a full transatlantic trade war.
Trump called it the biggest deal ever for the U.S. Von der Leyen talked about stability and predictability. But how did it actually go down across Europe? Sounds like reactions were mixed.
Very mixed is putting it mildly. You had Denmark's PM, Rasmussen, sort of shrugging, saying conditions aren't great, but it's about finding a tolerable balance for stability.
Pragmatic, maybe.
Yeah. Finland's PM, Orpo, saw predictability for businesses, but still pushed for, truly free trade down the line, dismantling barriers.
Then you had France.
Yeah.
Less impressed.
Much less. The French PM called it a somber day, saying Europe bowed down and gave up its own autonomy. Strong words.
Wow. And Germany. Always a key player, especially with their exports.
Germany's Chancellor Metz was more pragmatic, like Denmark. He basically said, look, it prevented a trade war that would have hammered German exports, especially cars. The tariff on cars dropped significantly from 27.5% down to 15%.
It's a big drop.
Huge. But he did mention there are still issues to sort out, particularly steel and aluminum. More negotiations needed there.
Okay, and then Hungary. Viktor Orban rarely minces words.
No, he doesn't. He wouldn't even call it an agreement. Use a pretty strong metaphor, saying Trump essentially swallowed von der Leyen for breakfast, called Trump strong von der Leyen too light for this game.
Oof. Okay, what about Ireland?
Ireland's trade minister, Simon Harris, tried to strike a balance. Said it gives necessary security for companies Irish, European, American, but wasn't happy about the 15% tariff. He wants a more solid foundation for trade.
Italy. Giorgia Meloni.
Cautious, positive overall, but wanted to see the details. She'd warned before about how unpredictable a trade war could be.
And others. Romania, Spain, Sweden.
Romania's PM apparently viewed it positively, according to an official note. Spain's PM, Sanchez, supported it, praised the commission, but did so without enthusiasm, as he put it. And Sweden's trade minister felt like nobody really won, but maybe it was the least harmful alternative. It offered some predictability, which was valued.
Such a wide spectrum of reactions. What does that tell us about the transatlantic relationship right now?
It really lays bare the tension, doesn't it? The push and pull between, well, economic necessity, avoiding that trade war, and this idea of European strategic autonomy. Some leaders clearly prioritized stability, even if it meant concessions. Others saw it as giving up ground to the U.S. It shows how difficult a truly unified European front is, especially with internal economic pressures and the backdrop of the war. National interests still diverge quite a bit.
And what was Russia's take on all this?
Predictably critical. Foreign Minister Lavrov gave a speech, said Europe would now be forced to pour like $750 billion into North American energy, ditching Russian supplies. He claimed this would hammer European exports and called the EU's position humiliating, said their submission to Washington would speed up Europe's deindustrialization.
So painting it as the U.S. exploiting its allies.
Exactly. That's the narrative, that the U.S. wants to control the global market and is using its allies to do it. It fits their broader critique of the West. Whether you agree with it or not, that's their perspective.
Okay, let's end on something potentially more positive. A glimmer of peace, maybe, in Southeast Asia. Thailand and Cambodia.
Yes, a hopeful sign there. Malaysia's Prime Minister, Anwar Ibrahim, announced that Thailand and Cambodia agreed to an immediate, unconditional ceasefire.
How did that come about?
It followed a high-level meeting in Putrajaya, Malaysia's administrative capital. Anwar hosted Cambodia's PM Hun Man and Thailand's interim PM Prawit Wongsuan. The ceasefire was meant to start at midnight local time, and they scheduled a meeting between their military commanders for the next day. Anwar sounded pretty optimistic it would help both countries.
And what did the Thai and Cambodian leaders say?
Hun Man called it a very good meeting with concrete results. Said the priority was stopping the fighting straight away to prevent more deaths. Prawit Wongsuan from Thailand, who apparently was a bit skeptical going in, said they'd honor the ceasefire in good faith.
Was there wider international involvement?
Yes, significantly. Both the U.S. and China had their ambassadors at the meeting, and Anwar mentioned that Trump and the Chinese leadership were apparently working behind the scenes talking to Thailand, Cambodia, and Malaysia to try and broker peace.
So big powers involved.
Definitely. And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio publicly praised the ceasefire afterwards. Shows a concerted diplomatic push.
But there's always a but, isn't there?
Yeah.
What's the reality on the ground?
Well, yeah. A reporter, Tony Shen, was in Thailand's Surin province. He noted that even while the talks were happening in Malaysia, there was still fighting. Artillery fire exchanged right before the meeting started. He also reported a large troop buildup in the Thai border area. So it's a positive step, a ceasefire agreement, but making it stick on the ground. That's the next challenge. Needs careful watching.
Absolutely. So quite a journey today. From the fierce fighting in Ukraine through these major diplomatic shifts, that really divisive trade deal, and then this fragile but hopeful ceasefire in Southeast Asia.
It really shows how interconnected everything is, doesn't it? You look at a trade deal or a debate about neutrality in Austria, and you see how they reflect and maybe even shape these wider conflicts and alliances. It makes you wonder, in a world where borders seem less fixed and alliances shift, what does real national autonomy even look like anymore? It's a tough question for many countries right now.